Before becoming the hand-picked successor to communist dictator Hugo Chavez, the current president of Venezuela, Nicolás Maduro Moros, had a background that mixed working-class roots, trade union activism, and a steady climb through Venezuela's socialist political system that ruined a nation. Under Maduro's rule, Venezuela has descended from one of Latin America's most prosperous nations into a country defined by hunger, hyperinflation, and fear. Once thriving cities are plagued by blackouts, corruption, and vanishing resources. While millions have fled across borders in search of food, medicine, or safety, international tensions have surged as U.S. and allied forces intercept drug-running vessels linked to Venezuelan and Colombian traffickers, many tied to networks within Maduro's own government. What began as a socialist promise has now evolved into a narco-state confrontation spilling beyond Venezuela's borders. Who is Nicolás Maduro? What is his background? How did he rise to power? How does he retain power? Hello, I'm Colin Heaton, former history professor, Army and Marine Corps veteran, and welcome to this episode of Forgotten History. Nicolás Maduro was born on November 23, 1962, in Caracas, Venezuela. His father, Nicolás Maduro Garcia, was a union leader. His mother, Teresa de Jesus Moros, was a homemaker. Nicolás had no formal education beyond high school, working many odd jobs until he became a bus driver for the Caracas Metro, which became a key part of his everyman image later in politics. While driving buses, Maduro became involved in trade union activism, representing Caracas Metro workers. He joined leftist political movements, aligning with the anti-imperialist and socialist ideas in the 1980s and 1990s. He was active in the Bolivarian Revolution from its initial stages, supporting Hugo Chavez even before Chavez's rise to power. Chavez saw enormous potential in Maduro, who, like him, worshipped communist leaders such as Fidel Castro and Che Guevara. During Chavez's reign, Maduro learned how to manipulate the masses and rig elections using inflated and outdated registries where dead citizens, duplicate entries, and migrants who left years ago remain listed and amazingly cast their votes. Those phantom voters can be activated by Venezuela's National Electoral Council, or CNE, internal system to pad turnout or justify result gaps. In 1998, Maduro was elected to the National Constituent Assembly, which rewrote Venezuela's constitution after Chavez's election. He served as a member of the National Assembly from 2000 to 2006 and later became Speaker of the Assembly from 2005 to 2006. Maduro wasn't known for original theory or charisma. His strength was loyalty and pragmatism. Within Chavez's inner circle, he was the safe pair of hands, disciplined, obedient, and trusted not to challenge the comandante. He built influence quietly through back-channel diplomacy and alliances with the military and Cuba's advisors. Maduro was then appointed as foreign minister from 2006 to 2013. In this role, Maduro became a loyal defender of Chavez's socialist and anti-U.S. policies on the international stage. He developed strong ties with Cuba, Russia, China, and Iran, helping position Venezuela as a leader of the Bolivarian alliance. In October 2012, as Chavez was dying of cancer, Maduro was appointed vice president. When Chavez died in March 2013, Maduro, his chosen successor, became interim president. Chavez had perfected the art of election fraud. After the death of Hugo Chavez, Maduro was declared winner of the presidential election held April 14, 2013, to no one's surprise, as the fix was in. In pro-government areas, mobile registration stations are abundant. In opposition zones, they're scarce or suddenly offline. Millions of Venezuelans living overseas, mostly opposition-leaning, are unable to vote because the Venezuelan embassies block or delay registration, and the regime defines who gets to vote before a single ballot is even cast. Centralized data servers are used. Even though machines collect votes locally, they transmit to CNE-controlled servers in Caracas, allowing real-time monitoring and manual manipulation. Assisted voting is pressure that is applied, especially in poor areas. Government workers or colectivos, armed civilian loyalists, stand near polling machines to help voters, an intimidation tactic to make sure they vote correctly. They also employed vote buying through social programs. Citizens using the Carnet de la Patria card, a digital ID tied to food subsidies, are scanned before or after voting, signaling those from whom the regime expects loyalty. Mid-count blackouts are common. Historically, CNE servers have paused reporting when opposition numbers surge, then resume hours later with reversed trends, such as during the 2017 regional races and the 2024 presidential vote. Even if local tallies are accurate, the centralized system decides what gets reported. Reporting and transparency suppression is normal. There is no open public audit trail. In contested elections, such as in May 2018, when Maduro was declared re-elected for a 6-year term, and then again in 2024, the CNE refused to release detailed precinct-level results. Independent tallies, collected by the opposition and leaked sources, claim his opponent, Edmundo Gonzalez, received a clear majority of more than 60% of the vote, but the official results were manipulated. The CNE did not publish full detailed results at the polling station level, refusing to allow independent verification. Outside international vote monitoring organizations such as the European Union, Organization of American States, and Carter Center are blocked from locations or restricted to pre-approved polling sites. Another glaring problem has been fabricated turnout figures. In 2017, Smartmatic, the voting machine vendor itself, declared the government had added over 1 million fake votes to turnout data. Without independent observers or verifiable data, official results are whatever the CNE says they are. After seeing the blatant fraud, Smartmatic cut ties with Venezuela completely. Since then, Venezuela's CNE controls all election machinery with no independent or foreign oversight. In every election, many major opposition parties and leaders were barred from participating, arrested, or just disappeared. Another tactic Maduro inherited from Chavez was quiet intimidation. Public employees were warned that their jobs and benefits depended on voting correctly. Armed gangs loyal to the ruling United Socialist Party of Venezuela patrolled opposition neighborhoods and polling sites, often standing near voting machines during protests to make sure civilians knew they were being watched. Another tool of the corrupt communists are media blackouts. State-run channels broadcast wall-to-wall propaganda, while opposition outlets face fines, blockages, or raids during campaign season. Corruption extends into the judiciary. The Supreme Court, filled with PSUV loyalists, routinely upholds the regime's victories and dismisses opposition challenges, even in the face of clear evidence of fraud. Occasionally, the CNE allows a few safe opposition wins to preserve the illusion of pluralism. To cover their tracks, the government practices data erasure. Independent poll data and vote tally photos shared online are scrubbed by cybercrime units or blamed on foreign interference. Even when the opposition wins locally, the regime rewrites the scoreboard at the national level. But Maduro has been accused of not just being a despotic communist leader stealing the nation's wealth for himself. He is, like Chavez, accused of being the leader of a narco state. Currently, the United States under President Donald Trump has been actively reducing the impact of drugs from Venezuela and Colombia by sinking the drug boats at sea. The Venezuelan government denies these allegations and claims many of these reports are U.S. propaganda or part of regime change efforts. Maduro himself has dismissed accusations of being a narco kingpin, but there is a lot of evidence to support that assertion. For example, two of Maduro's nephews, Efrain Antonio Campo Flores and Francisco Flores de Freitas, were arrested in Haiti in 2015 by the Drug Enforcement Administration for attempting to traffic 800 kilograms of cocaine into the U.S., and they were later convicted in a U.S. court. The investigation resulted in the U.S. Department of Justice and U.S. Treasury Department imposing sanctions on high-level Venezuelan officials, including senior military and political figures in the Maduro government, for alleged involvement in drug trafficking, money laundering, and aiding illicit trade routes. The term cartel de los soles, cartel of the sons, is widely cited in media and academic circles as a narcotics illicit mining network run by corrupt military officers in Venezuela, allegedly with links to the regime's top tier. They are also linked to illicit mineral precious metal extraction and cross-border gold trade used as adjuncts to narcotics-based money laundering and trafficking teams. The Cartel de los Soles is alleged to oversee fuel smuggling, gold mining, and arms as part of the same ecosystem. Because of Venezuela's opaque institutions, banking system, black market operations, and secrecy around military, air, and port facilities, definitively tracing shipments, money flows, and the exact chain of command remain difficult to establish. In August 2025, the U.S. government offered a $50 million reward for information leading to Maduro's arrest on drug trafficking charges. While many reports allege Maduro personally runs or directs the Cartel de los Soles, evidence showing him giving orders or being at the operational level is thin and contested. Some experts argue the cartel is a loose set of networks, not a tightly controlled organization headed by him. In Maduro's world of total control of all aspects of life and economics, this is impossible to believe. Another allegation which may have merit is that Venezuela enjoys a safe haven status due to its weakened institutional oversight, economic collapse, and border chaos, providing cover for traffickers using its territory for transit. This would only be possible due to political patronage, with senior state actors protecting or enabling traffickers in exchange for loyalty, public funds, or silence. Beyond drug smuggling and corruption, the true measure of Maduro's regime is found in its human rights record. According to the United Nations Human Rights Office and the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights, Venezuela under Maduro has faced credible reports of unlawful killings, disappearances, torture, and mass detention targeting political opponents and perceived critics. The advocacy group Foro Penal counts thousands of people detained for political reasons. They reported over 1,900 political prisoners in one stretch after the 2024 election. The Human Rights Watch published a major report saying, since the July 2024 election, Venezuelan authorities and pro-government armed groups, the colectivos, have committed killings, disappearances, arbitrary detention, and torture of opposition figures and protesters. The IACHR's report, Serious Human Rights Violations in Connection with the Elections of 2024, outlines a strategy of repression, pre-electoral persecution of opposition, hindrance to free participation, instilling fear to maintain power. For example, paper backup tallies or polling station data are withheld or manipulated. Amnesty International documented torture and ill treatment of detainees, including children. Women in detention were reportedly abused and coerced. There are documented cases, such as opposition politician Leopoldo Lopez, who was jailed for years under controversial charges, with international human rights bodies declaring his detention politically motivated. Direct attribution of specific killings to Maduro personally is difficult. Many abuses are documented by NGOs and UN bodies. However, proving who ordered what remains complex in authoritarian systems is difficult. Some of the arrests and detentions are framed by the regime as terrorism, conspiracy, public disorder, etc., which complicates the narrative of purely political persecution. The regime claims these are legitimate prosecutions. A human rights report from Human Rights Watch states that over 2,000 people were detained in connection with protest and opposition activity following the disputed July 2024 presidential election. The detainees frequently face delayed hearings, limited access to legal counsel, alleged torture, and prison conditions that violate international norms. The NGO Foro Penal reports that by early January 2025, approximately 1,697 political prisoners were documented in Venezuela after the election-related crackdown. In retaliation, the U.S. Treasury sanctioned multiple Venezuelan security intelligence officials for their roles in repression and arbitrary detention of democratic actors. Another allegation leveled against Maduro, which he denies, claims that his regime ordered the release of violent offenders and mentally unstable inmates from Venezuelan prisons and asylums. U.S. officials report that many later appeared among migrant groups crossing into the United States when Biden opened the border, creating new security and law enforcement challenges. Investigative reports show that criminal gangs from Venezuela, such as Tren de Aragua, have links to prison networks and have been associated with migration flows. They are also part of the expanded human and drug trafficking network that was allowed to flourish under the Biden administration, which is now being addressed. Venezuela once stood among the world's leading oil producers, self-sufficient and thriving with one of the highest standards of living in Latin America. Today it sits beside Haiti as one of the region's poorest nations, stripped of its wealth, democracy, and future. Maduro and Chavez before him enriched themselves while generations of Venezuelans were left to starve, flee, or disappear. The question now isn't how Venezuela fell, but whether it can ever recover. The future of Venezuela is uncertain. Its people have lost their livelihoods, their freedoms, and in many cases their lives. What was once a prosperous and self-sufficient nation now struggles to survive under the weight of corruption and poverty, with little hope of regaining what has been lost. Thank you for watching this episode of Forgotten History. If you liked what you saw, please click like, share, and subscribe. And if you would like to assist with the ever-increasing cost of production, please consider becoming a channel member and joining our Patreon page. Please check out our merchandise store. And thanks for watching.